I'm not what you would call a risk taker, unless you count eating gas station sushi or fishing in brooks barely wider than a sidewalk, which, let's be real, is only risky if you're worried about catching more tetanus than trout. My name's Joel Marsden. I'm 38, single by choice, and that's my story, I'm sticking to it. And I live in one of those nondescript apartment complexes off Scudder's Mill Road in Plainsboro, New Jersey. You know the type. Nice enough, but the walls are thin and you can hear everything your neighbor does, including the inexplicable tap dancing routines at 2 a.m. By day, well, late afternoon into night, I sling packages at the UPS store in the Plainsboro Plaza. It's thrilling stuff. There's nothing like helping a stressed mom ship 5 boxes of kids' clothes to her sister in Tampa, Florida, while some guy in the corner argues about the price of bubble wrap. Pays the bills, keeps me in fishing lures and ramen noodles. But I've always loved fishing. Always have. There's something about the quiet, the anticipation, the way the world shrinks down to you, the water, and maybe a bluegill if you're lucky. Most guys head out to Carnegie Lake or the Millstone River, but I like places no one else bothers with, which is how I found myself at Devil's Brook, deep inside the Plainsboro Preserve, on a muggy Thursday evening in May. If you've never been, Plainsboro Preserve is the sprawling patch of woods, wetlands, and winding trails, sandwiched between suburban sprawl and the last gasp of Jersey farmland. There's the big McCormick Lake, where kids from West Windsor come to spot turtles and try unsuccessfully to catch bass. But the real magic happens off the main trails, where Devil's Brook babbles, half hidden under a canopy of oaks and sweet gum trees, barely noticed by anyone except the occasional raccoon. And I'd always wondered if you can actually catch anything in a stream that small. The name Devil's Brook is probably just a relic from some long-gone settler with a flair for the dramatic, but I'll admit it gave the place an edge. So on a whim, with my old Zebco rod and a coffee can of night crawlers, I headed out just before sunset, the air thick with the promise of rain and fireflies. The preserve is beautiful at twilight, trees silhouetted against the last light, the air sweet and earthy. I parked near the Environmental Education Center, slung my tackle box over my shoulder, and hoofed it down to the boardwalk past the bird-watching blinds. No one around, just me, the frogs, and the steady hum of mosquitoes plotting my demise. Reaching Devil's Brook isn't easy. You've got to duck under branches, hop a few muddy patches, and pretend you're not lost even when you are. But I found it, a lazy coil of water no wider than my bathtub, burbling over stones and tangled roots. "Let's see what you got, devil," I muttered, threading a worm onto my hook. I cast my line, the plop of the sinker loud in the hush. I settled in, leaning against a mossy log, eyes half on the bobber and half on the way the last rays of the sun made the water shimmer. Now here's the thing about fishing. It's mostly waiting, and that's fine by me. It gives you time to think, or not think, to let your mind wander. Except for that night, my mind didn't so much wander as keep tripping over the fact that it was weirdly quiet, not just peaceful. You see, there were no birds and no wind, just the steady gurgle of the brook and the sound of my own breathing. And that's when I heard it, a scratchy shuffling sound behind me, just past where the roots in the undergrowth turned impenetrable. I tensed. Probably a deer, I told myself. Or a raccoon. Could even be a lost dog or a cat. "Hey, if you're looking for a snack, I hear worms are delicious," I called, trying to sound braver than I felt. No answer, just more rustling, but closer now. I twisted around, squinting into the gloom. Nothing. I went back to my bobber, trying to ignore the prickling at the back of my neck. and then I heard it again, a low scraping sound like claws dragging across bark. Alright, well now you're just being rude, I muttered, standing up and peering into the shadows. My flashlight was back in my tackle box. I fished it out and clicked it on, sweeping the beam across the tangled undergrowth. And that's when I saw it. It was crouched at the edge of the brook, maybe 20 to 30 feet away. A shape almost, but not quite human. It was short, maybe 4 feet, with skin the color of wet cement and so smooth it almost gleamed. Its arms were too long, ending in hands with fingers that looked more like knives than nails. But the worst part was its neck, unnaturally long, snaking up like a question mark, topped with a head that was mostly eyes, wide and black and glistening. No mouth, just those eyes staring at me with a kind of hungry curiosity. I froze. My usual defense mechanism, sarcasm, kicked in. "Hey there, kiddo. You lost, buddy?" The creature blinked, its neck swaying, and for a second I thought maybe it was going to back away. But then it hissed, a horrible wet sound that seemed to come from everywhere, and it lunged at me, claws first. I did what any sensible person would do. I screamed and swung my fishing rod like a baseball bat. The rod snapped in half on contact, but it knocked the creature back into the stream, where it writhed, hissing louder, those terrible claws flailing. Adrenaline did the rest. I grabbed a rock. It was big, heavy, and mossy, and I brought it down on the thing's head, again and again until it stopped moving. The hissing faded, replaced by the quiet gurgle of the brook and the frantic sound of my own breathing. I staggered back, dropping the rock, my hand shaking. I just killed something. Something that probably shouldn't exist. At least I never knew about it. My mind raced. Maybe it was some kind of mutant, a sick animal, or perhaps even a prank. But the creature's skin was smooth, gray, the neck way too long. I stared at it, heart pounding, guilt gnawing at my insides. I'm not a killer. I barely swat flies, but what else could I have done? I sat there for a long time, watching the sky darken. Eventually, I stumbled back to my car, leaving the creature half submerged in the water. I told myself I'd imagined it, that the darkness and the isolation had played tricks on me. But when I got home, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw its eyes, black and unblinking, almost accusing. The next day, well, it was business as usual. I went to work at the UPS store, made small talk with the regulars, and tried to convince myself that everything was fine. But it wasn't. You see, it started with the feeling that someone was watching me. Not just the usual paranoia you get when you're alone in a strip mall at night, but a real prickling sense of being observed. Then came the sounds. The scratching at the back door, the soft tapping at the windows after dark. I looked up from my computer, and I catch a glimpse of something gray and slender darting behind the dumpsters. One night, as I was locking up, I saw it, standing under the sickly yellow glow of the parking lot lights. The same creature, neck craned, eyes glinting, and claws flexing. It wasn't dead. It was following me, and this time, it looked very angry. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Joel, why not just call the cops, or hell, a biologist, or at least animal control? But what am I supposed to say? Hi, I'd like to report a long-necked, mouthless goblin stalking me at work. Oh, and it could have been a kid in a costume. Also, he's got a great set of murder manicured nails. You see, I'd be lucky if they didn't handcuff me to a gurney and wheel me straight to Princeton House. So I did what every self-respecting Jersey guy does. I tried to ignore it. I went about my days, slapping on a smile for the customers and pretending that the UPS store wasn't now the set of my own personal horror movie. I even made a joke about it to my coworker, Terry, who just nodded and said, "Man, you need a vacation," then went back to labeling Amazon returns. But the thing didn't stop. I mean, if anything, it got bolder. A week after the first encounter, I was working a late shift. Just me, the hum of fluorescent lights, and the smell of packing peanuts and toner. I was cataloging a shipment of boxes when I first heard it. It was a faint rhythmic tapping at the glass storefront, like someone drumming their claws. I looked up. I didn't see anything. I walked over, peering out at the empty parking lot, my reflection staring back at me. I looked like hell, bags under my eyes, jaw clenched. I was jumpy, sure, but hey, who wouldn't be after bludgeoning a creature to death in a nature preserve? I turned away, but then in the reflection I saw it. The creature pressed up against the glass, those eyes inches from mine. I spun around so fast I nearly tripped over a stack of flat-rate boxes, but the thing was gone. I locked the doors, checked the back room, and even called Terry, who didn't answer. Not a shocker there. But I tried to rationalize. Maybe it was a trick of the light. Maybe I was overtired. Maybe the Devil's Brook monster was just a product of my overactive imagination, added with a possibly tainted Slim Jim that I ate that day. But the next day, there were scratches on the glass, deep gouges as if someone had dragged a set of razor blades across the window. I started taking different routes home. I drove past the preserve every night, half expecting to see the creature lurking by the trailhead, waiting for me. My apartment, usually a sanctuary, felt claustrophobic. Shadows twisted behind the blinds. I slept with the lights on and a baseball bat by my bed. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of it out of the corner of my eye in the parking lot, by the dumpster, even once in the reflection of the bathroom mirror. Always seems to be watching, always silent and always reminding me of what I'd done. And the guilt, well, hell, it gnawed at me. I kept replaying that night, the way I'd smashed its head with a rock, the awful sound as bone gave way. Told myself it was just self-defense, but it didn't matter. I'd killed something that, for all I knew, was the last of its kind. I started drinking more, not a lot, just enough to take the edge off. I'd sit on my balcony, a can of Yingling in hand, staring out at the woods, wondering if it was there. Then came the night I realized things had completely gotten out of control. It was a Thursday. I was closing up, I was counting the till, when I heard the back door rattle. Not the wind. This was insistent, rhythmic. I grabbed my bat and I crept towards the door. My heart was hammering in my chest. The security light flickered, and then suddenly the rattling stopped and I held my breath, listening for additional noises. Then, from the other side of the door, I heard it. A wet, guttural hiss, the one that made my skin crawl and my legs want to sprint straight towards Pennsylvania. I did something incredibly stupid then. I opened the door. Don't ask me why. I just did it. It was there, crouched by the dumpster, neck craned, with its eyes fixed upon me. Its skin gleamed slick and gray under the light, with its claws raised up into the air. I raised the bat, trying to sound tough. "Listen, you little freak, I'm not in the mood. Why don't you go over there to the Wawa?" It just stared, head tilted with its eyes wide, and for a split second, I thought it looked sad. Or maybe that was just my own guilt staring back at me. But then it lunged towards me. I swung the bat, connecting with a sickening crack. The creature staggered but didn't go down. It swiped at me, claws grazing my arm with a burning sting and blood welling up from it. I stumbled back, adrenaline making everything sharp and bright. I screamed for it to stay away, swinging again. The bat splintered, but I caught it on the side of the head. The creature shrieked, a sound that made every hair on my body stand up, and then it scuttled off into the darkness. I slammed the door, locked it, and pressed my back against the cool metal. My arm throbbed, my chest heaved. I'd heard it again, but I also felt worse than before. I couldn't sleep that night. My arm burned, the scratches were deep and ugly, and I thought about going to the ER, but what would I say? Yeah, I got into a bar fight with a mutant? No, I wasn't going to do it. But the next morning I did call out sick. I sat on my couch with the bat on my lap, staring at the door. My phone buzzed. Terry, wondering if I could cover his shift. Fuck him. I ignored it. I thought about leaving, packing up, moving somewhere far away. Maybe Idaho. I'm not sure if they have monsters in Idaho. Probably just potatoes, but I thought about it. But I just couldn't leave yet. I had to know what the thing wanted. And probably most of all, I had to make it right somehow. The answer, of course, was back where it all started. Devil's Brook. I kept thinking about that night. The way the creature had looked at me. Not just angry, but curious. Maybe even scared. And who could blame it? I showed up on its territory, waving around a fishing rod and a can of worms, and then I bashed its skull in when it tried to say hello. I wasn't exactly a great ambassador for the human race. And so I made a plan. You see, I'd go back to the brook. I'd try to find it, or at least whatever was left of it. Maybe I could make peace. Maybe I could apologize. I know it sounds ridiculous, but guilt will make you do weird things. I waited until twilight because apparently I have a thing for tempting fate. I packed my old tackle box. Not that I expected to fish, but it felt right to bring it. I even brought an extra flashlight this time, plus a box of Band-Aids and a flask of bourbon for courage. My arm throbbed as I made my way through the preserve, the scratches already turning an angry red. The walk felt longer than before, every rustle in the underbrush making me jump. By the time I reached Devil's Brook, the sky was a bruised purple, and the woods were alive with the sounds of frogs and crickets. The brook hadn't changed, still narrow, still winding. The mossy log was there, and so was the spot where I'd left the creature. Except there was no body, just a dark stain on the rocks, already half washed away by the water. I swallowed, suddenly wishing I'd brought more bourbon, or perhaps even a priest. I sat down on the log and waited, flashlight in hand, trying not to think about how alone I was. The woods felt closer than before, the trees leaning in, and then I heard it. That familiar, faint, wet hiss coming from the other side of the brook. I stood, heart pounding, flashlight beam shaking as I swept it across the shadows. The creature was there, half hidden behind a fallen branch. It looked smaller somehow. It was hunched over and trembling. Its eyes were fixed on me, wide and unblinking. I took a shaky breath. "Hey," I said, my voice was cracking. "Look, I'm sorry. I was scared and you scared the hell out of me. I mean, Christ, look at you. But I shouldn't have. I mean, I didn't really mean to." It watched me, head tilting, neck swaying like a cobra. Its claws flexed, but it didn't move. "Hey, I brought you something," I said. I reached into my tackle box and pulled out a can of sardines. "Listen, don't judge. I just figured since I found it by the water that it liked fish. Anyway, I set them on the rock and I pushed them toward the water. The creature crept forward, wary, eyes never leaving mine. It reached out with those terrible claws and, surprisingly delicately, picked up the can. It sniffed at it, then looked at me, as if unsure what to do next. I tried to smile. It's food. You see, you eat it. Or, I don't know, maybe you absorb it. I don't know how you work, honestly. You're really quite ugly. It blinked then, with a sudden jerky motion, tossed the can aside. It landed in the brook with a splash. The creature hissed louder now and took a step toward me. I backed up, hands raised. Okay, no sardines. I get it. It stopped, its head craned high, its eyes locked on mine for a moment, for a long moment, and we just stared at each other, the brook babbling between us. And then, without warning, it turned and melted into the shadows, leaving me alone with my pounding heart and a useless can of fish. I waited, but it didn't come back. Eventually, I made my way home, feeling more confused and more afraid than ever. The next day, things got worse. I woke up to find muddy footprints on my balcony. Not raccoon prints. These were longer, almost human, with deep gouges where the claws had dug into the wood. My sliding door was unlocked. I never leave it unlocked. On my kitchen table next to my keys was a can of sardines. I stared at it, skin crawling. The message was clear. It knew where I lived. It could get in whenever it wanted. I called out to work again, telling Terry that I had the flu. He sounded skeptical, but I didn't care. I spent the day triple locking my doors, closing the blinds, and Googling things like how to get rid of monsters and do cryptids hold grudges. But the internet was no help. That night, as I laid in bed, I heard it, a faint scraping at the window, barely audible over the noise of my cheap fan. I pulled the covers over my head, my heart was pounding, and I tried to convince myself it was just the wind. But when I finally drifted off, I dreamed of long necks and black eyes, of claws scraping across glass. And in my dream, the creature stood at the foot of my bed, watching me silently. Now I couldn't keep living like this. I needed help. And so that Saturday I did the only thing I could think of. I drove to the Plainsboro Preserve and waited for the park ranger to show up. Ranger Collins was a gruff guy in his 50s. He's built like an oak tree and about as chatty. I told him I'd seen something weird in the preserve. Strange animal, maybe dangerous. I left out the part about the UPS store, the stalkings, and, the scenario with the sardines. He grunted and pulled out a notepad. Yeah, what it looked like. I hesitated. It was kind of small, gray, a long neck, big eyes, and sharp claws. He squinted at me. Are you sure it wasn't a raccoon? I'm pretty sure. Hell, I don't think it even had a mouth. He stared at me for a long moment, then scribbled something down. Now listen, you see it again, you let me know. You don't go poking around there on your own, okay? I nodded, feeling like an idiot, but at least someone else knew about it. That night at work, the creature visited again. I was restocking the bubble mailers when I heard the bell over the door jingle. I looked up, expecting a late-night customer. And of course, no one was there. I walked over, checked the parking lot. Nothing. And when I turned back, that creature was inside, standing by the counter, eyes locked on mine. I froze, my heart in my throat. What the hell do you want from me? I whispered. It tilted its head, neck swaying back and forth, its claws flexed, catching the fluorescent light. I backed up, hand shaking. Look, I'm sorry, okay? I shouldn't have hurt you. I was scared. Hell, look at you. You scared the hell out of me. It watched me, unblinking. And then slowly it raised one clawed hand and pointed at my arm, the spot where it had scratched me. I looked down. The scratches were still fresh and angry red, and when I looked back up, the creature was closer. I could see the texture of its skin, smooth, almost like polished stone. Its eyes were wet, reflecting the harsh light. I swallowed. You want... what? Revenge? It shook its head in a weird jerky motion that made its neck ripple, and then with a suddenness that made me flinch, it pressed its claw to its own chest, then to mine. I didn't understand. Me? You? It pressed its claw to my chest again, harder this time, and suddenly I felt a jolt like static electricity but deeper in my bones. My vision swam and the room spun. I stumbled back, clutching my chest. The creature watched, expression unreadable. And then, just as suddenly, the sensation faded. The creature stepped back with its eyes wide upon me. It turned and left out the door, disappearing into the night. I sank to the floor, gasping, my heart hammering. I didn't know what had just happened, but I knew one thing. I wasn't alone anymore. The days that followed that were strange. The scratches on my arm healed with impossible speed, leaving behind smooth, unmarked skin. My senses felt sharper. I could see better in the dark, and I'd hear sounds I'd never noticed before. The hum of electricity, the scuttle of insects on the walls. I craved raw meat, which was a new and unsettling development, and everywhere I went, I felt a presence in the back of my mind, like that creature was always watching me. I started seeing it in my dreams again, standing by the brook, by the counter at work, and by my bed. Sometimes it pointed at me, sometimes it pointed at itself, but it never said anything. And I think I know that it left something behind that night, a part of itself. Or maybe it took something from me. But either way, I'm not the same. I still work at the UPS store, though. I still fish, though never at Devil's Brook. I see Ranger Collins sometimes, and he gives me a look like he's waiting for me to confess something. And of course at night when Plainsboro is quiet, sometimes I could hear it. The hissing and the gentle scraping of claws on my bedroom window.